So happy new year everybody, welcome to 2025, and 2025 is looking to be a really exciting year for films and TV and all those things that we love. And while it's very exciting to be thinking about the future and thinking about 2025, what I want to do in today's video is take a look back at 2024 and go through my personal favourite movies of the year. This of course isn't an original idea, everybody on YouTube has done this. I'm actually quite late to the party, but I needed a day off work, so let's jump in. First thing I would like to mention before we dive into the list, this isn't a top 10 ranked video, which I've done in the past, mainly because I have not felt this unconfident about a top 10 list in a really long time. All of these movies that are in this top 10 aren't ranked from 10 to 1. These are just my favourite films of the year. I just picked 10 of them, and also I couldn't rank them. Like, every day building up to recording this video, I was changing the list, so I've decided just screw that, screw the ranking, let's just do 10 movies that I loved. These films are all interchangeable. Like, any of these honestly could have been my favourite of the year. And also, all of my lists are always based on UK release dates. I'm from the UK, so I have to go off of that. So there is one movie in this list which is technically a 2023 release, but we got it in January 2024 here. So let's start with that one. The Holdovers. Oh, what a special, delightful film this was. As I mentioned just a second ago, this is technically a 2023 movie, but it did come out in 2024 here in the UK. So I love the movie that much. I just felt like it deserved a place on this list. I fell in love with this movie. It's got such a lovely vibe to it. It's a, really chilly, but in most cozy way possible type of film. You've got amazing performances from Paul Giamatti and Divine Joy Randolph, and Dominic Sessa. What a find. I'm really excited to see where he goes in the future, because he wasn't even an actor. They just found him when they were location scouting for this movie, and I think that's such a cool story. We know he's going to be in Now You See Me 3, which I can't remember if that's coming out this year or if it's next year. I think it is this year. So he is getting work off of this movie, which I'm really happy about. But it's mainly the vibe of this movie I love. It's just such a cozy movie. And like I say, this came out in January, but this is definitely a Christmas movie. And it did come out for the holiday season in America. So I naturally had to watch this over the holiday season of 2024. And I did, and it was perfect. I absolutely loved it. It really filled my heart with so much warmth and joy. And honestly, as someone who's not massively into Christmas movies, this is a modern Christmas classic for me. I guarantee I will be watching this at Christmas this year, just like I did last year. It totally deserves it. Beautiful film, loved it. Next up, we have Dune Part 2. Now, Dune Part 2 shouldn't come as a surprise if you know me. This film is of course directed by Denis Villeneuve, who is my personal favourite director of all time. I adore his work. And what really impressed me about Dune Part 2 is how into it I got. Because, for complete transparency, Denis, he is my favourite director, but I didn't love the original Dune film from 2021. I also wasn't massively excited about it either, because it was very, high concept sci-fi, which isn't always my thing. And when I found out that Denis was going to be directing Dune, I was really happy for him, because I know how passionate he is about the series, and it is his favourite novel of all time. Awesome that he's getting to adapt it. But just for me personally, I was like, I don't know how much I care about Dune. I liked the original film. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. What amazed me about Dune Part 2 is how much I loved it. This second film makes the first one 10 times better, and when you look at them as a complete package, obviously Part 1 and Part 2 are telling the story of just one novel. It's as a complete package, it's amazing. It's so good. The craftsmanship on display here is just insane. The score from Hans Zimmer, the cinematography from Greg Fraser, directing from Denis, it's just insane. The performances across the board are amazing. Timothée Chalamet, who is an actor I'm liking more and more the more I see of him, is really good here. Rebecca Ferguson is fantastic in here as well. Javier Bardem is a standout. And I think the real kind of big surprise performance here was Austin Butler, who I really liked in Elvis a couple of years ago, and I've liked him in other performances. He was also really good in The Bike Riders this year. But in Dune, he just unleashed this kind of animalistic version of himself that he hasn't shown before. So Dune Part 2, I went into it excited. I thought I was going to like it. I didn't think I was going to love it as much as I did. And it got me so into the world of Dune. I'm really excited about Dune Messiah. I really hope that Denis can really just close off this story really well. And I'm sure he will, because he's a master at what he does. Next up, we have the one MCU film of the year, and that was Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, going into this movie, of course, it was going to be exciting. You know, we've been waiting on the third Deadpool movie for quite a long time, and knowing that this one was not only going to be in the MCU, but also introduced Hugh Jackman into the MCU as Wolverine, it was going to be, you know, a fanboy's dream. And as someone who still enjoys the MCU, like, I agree, they're certainly not, you know, in their heyday anymore, but I still enjoy the MCU. I was looking forward to the movie, and I think Deadpool and Wolverine delivers what you want. You know, it's a really fun, entertaining, you know, nerd-filled adventure. And I personally had a good time with it. I don't think it's like an absolutely amazing top-tier movie. I don't think it's like the best of the MCU or anything. I don't even necessarily think it's the best Deadpool movie. It might even be the weakest of the trilogy, to be honest. But Deadpool and Wolverine, as a cinematic experience, I enjoyed it. I watched it 3 times in the cinema because I had different people wanting to go at different times, and I just couldn't say no each time. You know, seeing Ryan Reynolds playing this character who, you know, Ryan Reynolds I'm a bit hit and miss with sometimes, but as Deadpool, I really like him. He really gets the character. And Hugh Jackman hasn't missed a beat since, you know, playing Wolverine a few years ago. He was amazing. Genuinely one of Hugh Jackman's like better Wolverine performances. He's really, really good in this. Of course, we got like the comic accurate suit. We also got lots of really fun cameos throughout the movie. The action was pretty strong. Story was a bit on the weak side, but I feel like the story was always going to be a bit on the weak side. But for me, like, this movie is about pure fun, and I personally had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really happy that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman actually got to make this movie together, because they've always wanted to. Next up is Richard Linklater's Hitman. Now, there's going to be a theme. A couple of movies have a theme in this, which is Mr. Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell definitely had a year. I mean, it was insane for him, and as someone who is ever so slightly in love with Glenn Powell, it's inconceivable that this movie wasn't going to be on this list just because of how sexy this movie is. It is insane how sexy this movie is, and I personally thought that the film was not only incredibly sexy, but also just very charming, very funny, and I was really invested in the story of it. I think this film is so entertaining. Glenn Powell playing essentially multiple different roles in the same film. I think he delivers it really, really well. He also wrote this movie, which was pretty impressive. And his chemistry with Adria Arjona is really compelling. It's strong. They sell it really well. Their chemistry is electric throughout the film. And I just think that this movie is kind of one of those films that I'm just going to remember over time. And I'm really sad that this is a Netflix movie, because while I got to see it in the cinema, I really want to own this on Blu-ray. So unless, you know, Criterion pulls their finger out and gives us a release of this, I'm not sure if I'm going to get that. But if you haven't seen Hitman, go check it out on Netflix. It's such an entertaining ride. It's so funny. It's so charming. And if you love Glenn Powell and you've been really enjoying him this year, especially if you've been enjoying the kind of Glennaissance since Top Gun Maverick, I cannot recommend this movie enough. Then we have Bad Boys: Ride or Die. Now, I kind of forgot going into this year that we were getting another Bad Boys movie, because it just wasn't really marketed very well. And Bad Boys for Life, which came out in 2020, was one of my favourite films of that year. I just really enjoyed it. Like, pure fun action spectacle with great movie stars front and centre. And Ride or Die delivers that same experience, and in a way I'd say this movie is actually even a little bit better. I think that Ride or Die, honestly, is the best movie in the Bad Boys franchise yet. It's got great action, like probably the best action of the franchise. Like what Alil and Badal actually deliver on screen with this, like their direction in the action scenes is insanely cool. Like they do some really interesting stuff here. Will Smith, I think, delivers his best performance in the franchise yet. I think they actually do some really interesting stuff with his character. Same with Martin Lawrence. I also just love the team of this movie, like the ammo team that they assembled in the last movie. They continue here. We also have the villain from the previous movie joining the good side, which is just stuff I love. This movie is just perfect for me. Like, I love these type of action movies, and I really enjoyed it. And what I love most about it is this film in particular, it reminds me of the Fast and Furious movies in the best way. Like, this is the Fast and Furious franchise when it was at its peak. You know, I'm talking like Fast 5, Fast 6. This is what these movies feel like to me. So going back to that kind of style of action filmmaking with these characters that we love, I just really love it. And I really hope we get one more Bad Boys movie out of this. I think they've got one more in them, and I really hope that that does happen. Then we have Beetlejuice, which there was a couple of movies this year that kind of became a personality for me, and this was certainly one of them. I'd never seen the original Beetlejuice before. It was just never a movie I'd gotten around to, but before this sequel came out, I thought, I'm going to go check it out. and I fell in love with that original film. So funny, so original. I've never seen anything like it, and I don't think anybody has made anything like it since, bar this movie, bar the sequel. I just thought it was so entertaining. And the sequel itself, while I don't think it quite reaches the same highs as the original Beetlejuice, there's no denying that this movie is just incredibly fun. Like, full to the brim with creativity, the craftsmanship, the set design, the costumes, everything is perfect. I think all the casting throughout, like Michael Keaton hasn't missed a beat since playing the character all those years ago. Catherine O'Hara coming back is fantastic. Winona Ryder coming back is amazing. Jenna Ortega coming in, I think, is a really strong choice for Tim Burton. Like, I think her and Tim Burton, clearly after Wednesday, are working together quite well. I just think that the movie is filled with so much fun. There's a lot of really awesome, interesting new world building they do, because that's one of the other things I love about the Beetlejuice films is the world that they create is really fascinating and just interesting to be in. And I think the sequel gives us a lot more interesting elements of that. I just thought Beetlejuice was so much fun, a great experience in the cinema. And you have Willem Dafoe also, who I forgot to mention, who is just chewing up scenery throughout the entire movie as he does. I really enjoyed this. Again, I would not be opposed to them doing a third one if they wanted to. I feel like that might be a long way away, but great film, great franchise, and something I'm really happy I delved into in 2024. And then we have Late Night with the Devil. Now, horror was a really strong genre this year, and while this is the only horror movie I have on this list, I would kind of like to dedicate the spot to all of the horror movies that came out this year, because there was a lot of really good stuff. But if I had to single it down to one, it has to be Late Night with the Devil. This was the most unique horror movie that came out this year, in my opinion. I just thought it was fascinating to watch. This kind of concept of a live episode of a talk show from the 80s. What an idea, like what a concept. And the way it's delivered, it feels like a real live recording. I mean, if it didn't have an actor like David Dastmalchian in the lead, and it was, say, an unknown, for example, I honestly maybe wouldn't be able to tell the difference, but it's so well done. I love the way that the movie kind of transitions from the live recording of the episode to the behind-the-scenes stuff, so you can kind of see how the tensions are rising throughout as things start to go wrong, as things start to get weird. And I also think that David Dastmalchian deserves so much credit for this, because he's one of those actors who's been in movies for years. Like, he's always been in stuff, and he's always delivered. He's always great, but he's never had the opportunity to step into that lead performance. And here, he does that, and he has so much charisma. Like, I feel like he's never been allowed to show that charisma before, because he's always kind of been cast as these weirdo characters a lot of the time. So him playing Jack Delroy, this kind of charismatic, you know, almost, I guess, Jimmy Fallon-esque kind of character, it really shows, and I was really impressed with him and his performance as, you know, the night goes on and he becomes more stressed out and more crazy to what's going on this live show. It's really compelling, and I really enjoyed watching it. I think Late Night with the Devil is quite unlike any horror movie that they released in the past, like, 5-10 years. It really stood out to me, something really unique, something different, and something fresh. And as, you know, the horror genre has become more and more saturated lately, it's nice to have these kind of fresh takes every here and there, and I think Late Night with the Devil was definitely the freshest horror movie in 2024. And then we have Alex Garland's Civil War. Now, I was really looking forward to this film, because Alex Garland is a director I really enjoy. I think that his films are fantastic, and him kind of taking on this very political, you know, very timely film about a civil war happening within America, and obviously this film came out a few months before the most recent American election, I think was a bold choice, and one that does pay off in the long run. I know there are a lot of people who have issues with this movie, and a lot of people say that, you know, it doesn't take a side enough, and it's, you know, not particularly saying anything. But I don't think that was the point of the movie. Like, this film is clearly about not film journalism, about war journalism and war photography, and I think that if you look at it through that lens, I think the movie plays incredibly, incredibly well. This movie isn't actually about the Civil War that's kind of in the center of the film. If anything, the Civil War is actually the background. It's kind of where the character work comes into focus, and that's the backdrop. And I think that this film, when you look at the performances involved, like Kirsten Dunst is phenomenal here. Wagner Moura is also really good, and Kaylee Spaney, who's also had an amazing couple of years, she does a really good job here as well. I think the film is really intense, it's exciting, it's incredibly intriguing, it's also scary in parts. I think that Alex Garland just delivers something quite unique and quite special. And also, as an IMAX experience, I didn't expect this film to be such a big IMAX spectacle, but I'm really glad I watched it in IMAX because it really heightened the experience, especially the sound design. Like, the gunfire in this film was so, like, I've never been more scared of a gunshot in a movie. There's one scene in particular where the characters are moving through this, like, apartment complex, and it's all really quiet and really silent. But as soon as a gunshot goes off, it literally strikes fear into your heart. And I think that's really insanely well done. So for me, Civil War, I know this movie didn't work for everybody, but for me, it personally did. And I really enjoyed watching it. I thought it was such a unique and interesting experience, and one that I'm really glad we got this year. And then we have Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Now, obviously, in my previous video, I talked about the Sonic Hedgehog 3 post-credit scenes, and I also gave my thoughts on the movie in that video, so I won't spend too long on this one. But I just loved it. Like, what an experience. I love the Sonic trilogy. I just think it's so well done, and as a fan of the Sonic games, like, growing up with them, these films are just absolutely made for me. And this one, it's the best of the trilogy so far. Really enjoyed it. Everything they did with Shadow and Keanu Reeves in the role was pitch perfect. And I also don't think a movie this year gave me as much of a visceral reaction physically as the Live and Learn sequence from Sonic 3. I was literally shaking in my seat when I heard that opening guitar riff. So, Sonic 3, you were absolutely amazing. I can't wait till you come out on Blu-ray so I can watch you again. But lastly, and I'm going to put it out there and say that this was my favourite film of 2024. Like I say, this list wasn't ranked, but I left this one till last because this was the film that consumed me the most this year. This was the film that definitely my personality was based on this year, and the movie that I have gone back to the most this year. I've watched this film, I think, 3 or 4 times now, and that's Twisters. I just loved Twisters. I knew I was going to love it, but I didn't think I was going to love it as much as I did. As mentioned earlier, I love Glenn Powell, and this is just an amazing Glenn Powell performance. Tyler Owens as this kind of cowboy tornado wrangler, just perfect for him. Like, he fits that character mold so well. But the entire cast throughout the rest of the movie is really good. Daisy Edgar Jones, who was an actress I wasn't that familiar with, really, I think really sold the lead performance. Anthony Ramos is an actor I also really enjoy and stuff. He's great here. And the supporting cast, you know, you've even got like Brandon Perea from Nope in this movie, who was great. And the action scenes throughout, you know, I think that Lee Isaac Chung, coming off of Minari of all things, does a really good job of these big spectacle action sequences, you know, these tornadoes and these twisters. It looks great on screen, and the kind of physical surroundings of these tornadoes as they get ripped and torn apart and people start flying everywhere, it sells it so well. As someone who's like never ever been in a tornado and probably never will because I live in the UK, it's like it sold it really well to me. And this film also easily had the best soundtrack of the year. Oh my god. That soundtrack is just bursting at the seams with amazing country music. As someone who loves country music, it felt like that soundtrack was designed for me. I have not stopped listening to the soundtrack from Twisters since it released. Just absolutely wall-to-wall bangers throughout. Words cannot express how much I love this movie. Like, I really, really loved it. And I think it all is kind of culminated in... This movie was also written by Joseph Kosinski, who gave us Top Gun Maverick, which, you know, was my favourite movie of 2022, but also became one of my favourite movies of all time. And I think if Twisters, if I keep watching it and I keep becoming obsessed with it over time, as I have throughout the year, Twisters might be moving up into that spot. Like, it might be coming up into, like, the favourites of all time ranking. Just a great film. Like, my kind of blockbuster, perfect for me. I loved every aspect of it. Just pure entertainment, pure fun, movie stars on show here. And for me, Twisters, it's the movie that I loved the most this year. It's the movie I went back to the most this year. And it was the film that, like I say, kind of gave me my personality this year. So I kind of feel like it would be wrong to give this top spot to any other movie other than Twisters. So there you have it, guys. There's my favourite movies of 2024. Make sure to let me know your list in the comment section down below. Which film did you love the most this year? Do we share any? Whatever you think, whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more content just like this, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And I hope to see you guys again next time.